Hello everyone, this is HP Junior 97, or Hans, and welcome to my life today. And today I'm going to be talking with a very very interesting individual by the name of Rev Samuel Green, who he is a reverend, he's an apologist, he's a minister for he has his own website known as Engaging with Islam. Also, since 1999, he's been part of the Australian Evangelical Department for Students as a campus evangelist, and is also part of the Islamic Engagement Directory. He's had many debates with prominent figures such as Dr. Shabir Ali, Adnan Rashid. He's also been featured on prominent Islamic channels, Sunni Islamic channels such as SC Dawa and Consider This Live TV by Kenny Bomber. He also has his own website called Engaging with Islam, a website in which he gives Christians answers to Muslim questions and how Christians should engage with Islamic claims, such as what do Muslims believe, and having key understandings of what Muslims believe about Christianity. He's also an author of the book Where to Begin with Islam, where again he goes over what Muslims believe about things such as the Trinity, what their view of salvation is, what they believe about Muhammad in regards to him being in the Bible and prophesied in the Bible, etc. And he answers those common claims by the Muslims and the common objections. So that's the introduction to Reverend Samuel Green. Could you just further explain yourself, Reverend?
There we go. Fantastic. Thank you, Hans, for having me on your channel tonight. It's great to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
You've asked for a little bit more explanation about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'm an Australian. I grew up in Sydney, and I became a Christian when I was 19. And I was that was through a man coming into the service station where I worked and asking me if I was a Christian, and I wasn't really sure at that stage. I was trying to be good enough to say I was a Christian, and he explained to me that it wasn't about me being good enough, but it was all about what Jesus had done for me.
Amen.
It was about what God had done for me in sending Jesus, and how Jesus had lived the perfect righteous life. He had given glory to God that I hadn't done. He had died for my sins to pay for them, and it was through him that I could now come fully confident to God and call God Father and be a Christian because of what Jesus had done for me. And I just had to put my faith in this and receive it as a free gift. And so I became a Christian by God's grace when I was 19. I started to attend a church, and at the university where I was studying, there was a Bible teaching ministry, and so I started to attend that and learn the Bible. And while I was there, I started to share my faith with other people, and some of them were Muslims. And what I very quickly found out was that my Muslim friends already had an understanding of Jesus, and one that they would challenge me with, and they would reject some really basic things, that Jesus was God, or that Jesus died on the cross, or whatever it might be. They were prepared in a way that other people weren't. It's not that other people weren't prepared, but they just believed different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I very quickly found out that I needed to do some extra research, and I'll get to explain what my book does and how it helps in this regard to understand where Muslims are coming from. But I very quickly realised that we needed some resources in this area, and there were some resources around, but I just started to develop my own for my own Christian evangelical community. I think one of the things that really topped it off for me was that I went to an Ahmed Dadat meeting in Sydney. I believe this was one of his last big public meetings. I'm not 100% sure. He may have done something else. But it was in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And I went along to that meeting, and so it was in the Sydney Town Hall. It was full, so there was 2,500 mainly Muslims there. There were some Christians there, but it was overwhelmingly Muslims who were obviously keen to see their champion. And he just got up and was saying things that were just nonsense, just about Jesus never saying he was going to die on the cross or anything like that. It was just, it's not even taking the Bible seriously if you think the Bible says Jesus did not die on the cross. You're not actually even being honest at that point, because it's overwhelmingly. And so I got up to challenge him at question time. We were allowed to have questions, and so I had a conversation with him, and that went for 15 minutes, and that was good. But it was coming away from that when I just realised how much more Muslims are prepared to talk to Christians than Christians are prepared to talk to Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I'll get to that later on in my book, but it was from that I got started. So that's where I began. And yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I saw that video briefly. Had about 1 million views or something. It's a lot of views. And I know Ahmed Dadat was a very funny character. He had his own book, something kit. I forgot the name of it. The whole kit to try and debunk Christianity and.
I've got it here. Combat. It's called Combat Kit.
Yes, that's it. The Combat Kit.
I mean, I've got some of his leaflets here. So we're probably. So here's some of them. I don't know if I have it, but I've got a lot of his. I collect all of his stuff and have engaged with it. I've got an article on answering Islam where I go through that. I can't find it now, but I do have it somewhere.
Yeah, because I saw an Answering Islam a few months ago about his combat kit, where essentially he tries to say that the Bible is false and all of this other stuff and how to answer Christianity. But a lot of what he says has actually been debunked by good Christians having a good answer. Because I think with Ahmed Dadat and his ilk, a lot of it is a very emotionalism. It's, sensationalism and stuff like that, and it pumps up people. But in reality, when you actually look at his sources and what the man was saying, he's actually not being honest, really, or he's not giving the full picture. So that takes me into the next question. So you said you started with Ahmed Dadat. What sort of things helped you to further expand your knowledge on Islamic theology, or on how you should engage with Muslims? Was it a specific individual that helped you, or was it specific ministry that helped you, or was it just by your own self?
Look, I think the answer is yes to all of those. I became a writer in the very early days of the website Answering Islam. And so I've been with that, not from the very beginning, but from very close to the beginning. So I joined that about 98, I think. And I started writing articles there. And through that, I had a network of people that I could discuss ideas with. So I think it's important to have other people that you can talk the ideas through. I started to read the Quran and the Hadith and Islamic literature. There wasn't much on the web in those early days. But that's obviously changed now. And for me, when I was at primary school, so primary school in Australia is up till 12 years of age. But the primary school I went to had a motto, and many schools have a motto. And my motto, the motto of my school was learn by doing.
Okay.
Learn by doing. And while I have written books and I can read Arabic and do a lot of things, I'm not naturally academic. I've just had to persevere at these things. And so that's how I've done it. And so how I've learnt to answer things has been by just talking to Muslims and debating them and finding out what they say, and then going back and listening to what they say again. So whenever I would, because I've had about maybe 57 debates, and I've always gone back over and listened to each debate as I've edited the video, put the slides up of the quotes, and to get it ready for YouTube, you've got to get rid of dead spots and everything. And so I've always listened to the debates again, and because you can miss things when you first hear them, and so I've developed a whole lot of my material from listening to them and listening to how they get out of situations. So early on in my debates, Muslims would debate a subject, and I'd go fairly well in the debate, but then they would say, but we believe all the prophets, and they'd finish the debate by saying they believed all the prophets, and it would sort of give the impression that they were true believers, and it would counter what I had said, even though in one sense it didn't have anything directly to do. It would create an impression. And so I started to think about how I talk about the Bible. And so instead of just saying Bible, I started to change it. And so you can see these are the Bibles I've actually had published there.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so I stopped saying Bible and started saying Torah, Prophet, Psalms, and Gospel. And I said, it's Christians who believe all the prophets, because we're the one. We read them. We read Moses. We read David. We read Isaiah. We read all the prophets. Whereas in Islam, it's one man telling you what to believe about the prophets. So it's a completely different type of. It's nothing at all like Christianity. Christianity is not just the Apostle Paul telling you what to believe about Moses. The Apostle Paul says, go and read Moses yourself. Whereas Muhammad never says go and read Moses yourself. Really, there might be little things where you could say maybe that, but it's. But so Muslims have got this idea that they believe the prophets, when in practice they don't. And so I had to. It was from just debating that I started to go, I need to show this. And so at the start of each debate, I would say, the question today is Jesus God? I'm going to be answering this from the Bible. What is the Bible? And then I'd give an explanation of what the Bible is, that it's all the prophets. And then I'd say, now, what's the Quran? The Quran is one man. The Quran is one man telling you what to believe about the prophets. And you may say it's the word of God, but it's still one man. It's nothing like the Bible. And then what I found is once I did that, they weren't able to say, we believe all the prophets, because I dealt that. And but again, how did that happen? It was just trial and error. And so now I hope that you guys and those of you who are keen to be involved with this, can learn from my mistakes. And in my book, I sort of explain this journey.
Okay, that's very interesting, because myself, in regards to myself, my journey was, obviously, I have loads of Muslim friends. One of my best friends back in high school was actually a Muslim, was a Sunni Muslim. And he was a really good close friend of mine. This was before I even converted to Christianity. And he used to talk to me about Islam quite a lot. He used to talk to me about, the afterlife, and about this angel coming to you and you having to recite Arabic, and about how Christianity was corrupted, etc. So I nearly converted to Islam when I was about 15, 16. And then obviously I didn't. I just thought it was not for me. Then I went through my soul searching, essentially, in my teen years. And then when I was around 19, I actually converted to Christianity properly, actually believed in the gospel. And because of where I was in university at the time, my first year of university. I went to University of Kingston. That's where I met you initially.
Yes. Yeah, I remember now.
The
Yes.
debate with Adnan Rashid back in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I met you in person. So in Kingston University, there is a quite big Muslim demographic. So it's quite a lot of Muslims. Some of my course mates were Muslims, some of them which were very close. So after I had become Christian, I had realized that I kind of need to also look into Islam, into what they believe, because a lot of the people that I know are Muslims. And so I just looked into it. I looked into people such as yourself. I looked into people like Dr. Anthony Rogers, or Reverend Anthony Rogers, should I say. I looked into people like David Wood, other individuals, basically. Dr. James White, his debates as well.
Right.
So I looked into all of these different types of debates. Also, there's Speaker's Corner here in London, so I would watch videos about Speaker's Corner as well, Christians versus Muslims, Dr. J. Smith as well. We used to go to Speaker's Corner a lot. I know that you and Jay Smith did a video actually in Speaker's Corner nearly 10 years ago. So I would watch all these like type of videos, and I would try to decipher the major differences and how I would engage with Muslims. So my next question is, that brings me to my next question. When it comes to engaging with Muslims, what is the sort of attitude that we Christians have? Because a lot of the online sort of engagements that I see seems to be quite negative at times. It seems to be, is Muslims insulting Christian belief, and then Christians insulting Islamic or Muslim belief, and them just going back and forth. So from your time and your experience, what would you say is the best way to engage with Muslims in a respectable manner that they would actually end up listening to us?
Look, it has to be to show respect and honor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now, the Bible says that we're to love everyone, absolutely, but I think we can be a bit more, just a little sharper in this particular area, and that is, we're not to be people who use foul language, or people who are trying to ascribe motive. I mean, one of the things that I do or don't do is I don't ascribe motive to people. So if someone makes a claim and it's just wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I can ascribe a motive and say, you're wrong, and you're a deceitful brat, or I could say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make some derogatory claim. Now, in the end, I don't know people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to have that humility of saying, I don't know what people say. In the Quran, it often talks about how Allah knows the secret things or whatever. Now, what is it? The hidden thing. I can't remember now, but and so I will sometimes use this with Muslims when they say it to me, when they'll ascribe a motive to me, and I'll say, you know the hidden things or whatever. It's a Quranic phrase, and
Mm-hmm.
I just try to say to them, we don't know the motives from each other. That's only something that God can judge. Even your own book says that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I try to do, is to not ascribe motives. Now, maybe on some occasions motives are obvious and need to be called out, but generally I won't do that. I think one of the issues here is that I'm an older man now. And as you get older, by God's grace, you just get wiser and a little more careful in what you say. And when you're young, it's easier to be, a little more hot-headed,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just young. And when I was young, I was going to be Amin Dadat thing and getting up there. Now I'd still do it now, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be a struggle, I think, for young Christian men, just because being a Christian doesn't stop you from being a young, hot-headed man, right? You've actually got to control that. You've got to learn to have self-control. And, when I was younger, I could get angrier quicker than I do now. It takes me more time. because I'm just older and I tend to avoid those situations now. So, I think we've got to show Muslims love, respect, and honour. That's what I do. So I always give gifts when I debate in person. I like to debate, shake hands. I don't ascribe motives. I believe that Muslims are being genuine. So I just, when they talk to me, I assume that they are being genuine with me. And so I will want to be genuine with them. And then my third point would be, as I said, and you've got to realise your age. If you're younger, then what is it? 1 Timothy, or is it 2 Timothy chapter 4, where he goes, "Flee therefore the evil desires of youth."
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the evil desires of youth is argumentativeness and just arguing and being angry because you're young. And that'd be my three things.
Yes, that's very wise things, because I know personally I've been there as well. In my first year or two when I was a Christian, I just wanted to debate Muslims, and I would just get quite hot-headed at times. So, and I see that a lot when I watch videos of Speaker's Corner and look at the comment sections in YouTube videos, that there's a lot of this hot-headedness going on within Christian and Muslim relations or dialogue. And I think the best thing to do is that we need to know that we need to love them, have a good discussion with them, and we need to actually try and engage with them in a respectable manner. Because I think by doing so, that will actually better the discussions that we have. And by doing so, some people could even come and accept the truth of Christianity. So now I just want to say my next set of questions is we're going to basically answer common objections that Muslims have to Christianity, because I saw that you did a debate with Rabbi Tovia Singer as well, in Australia. I think, was it in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, or 20? Yeah. So I watched a little bit of it, and Rabbi Singer is very popular with Muslims. Most of his subscribers actually are Muslims, because Muslims were trying to use his sort of arguments to try and debunk the New Testament, stuff like that. So that brings us to our next section, some of the common objections. So the first major objection that Muslims always bring up is a doctrine known as tahrif, or corruption. So essentially they try to say that the Bible itself is corrupted, and that we can't really trust it. And they will try to use verses like Jeremiah 8:8 and stuff like this that says even within the text itself it's corrupted. And I saw some of your debates on this topic. So what would you say to that claim, that if I was a Muslim and I said, oh, your Bible is corrupted anyway, we can't trust it? What would you say to that claim, actually?
So with Jeremiah 8:8, I would say just keep reading Jeremiah, because it talks about there are three things with Jeremiah 8:8. He says that he addresses a particular group of priests, of scribes, and says that their pen has made the law a lie. But what does that mean? I mean, he doesn't say they have changed the law, right? So it doesn't say that. What does it mean that your pen has made the law a lie? Well, it could just be that they are, what they're writing and teaching about the law is not true.
Yeah.
Right? So the verse itself actually, sometimes Muslims will say to you, this shows the Bible's been changed, and we just fall for it without actually reading it. Because when you actually go and read it, you go, actually, it doesn't say the text has been changed. It just says these people, what these people write is false. What is it that they write? So for instance, in the New Testament, Jesus talks about the traditions of the elders going against the law of God, and how they
made the law of non-effect with their traditions.
Made the law of non-effect, exactly. And so maybe that's exactly, what's happening then. It's happening in Jesus' time, that they've got the law and they're making it of no effect. So that would be my first point with that. My second one would be that there's actually good scribes in the book of Jeremiah. So there's Baruch, who is Jeremiah's scribe, and he's a good scribe. So he's not changing the law. So again, it's just addressing a certain group, and you can't expand from one group and say it applies to the whole. Right? I mean, Muslims, as Muslims would say, just because there are Muslim terrorists, that doesn't mean every Muslim is a terrorist. Right? So, and that's an argument they would understand, and that's true. That's true. But just because Jeremiah says there's a group who are making, from whatever way, making the law into a lie, that doesn't mean every scribe everywhere was doing that. And his own scribe, Baruch, is evidence of that. There are good scribes too. So you're just exaggerating, you're taking the exception and making it apply to the whole. And you can't do that as a method of arguing. And then my last point would be, and I don't have the reference right here on me, but it's on my Engaging with Islam website, under Common Bible Verses Muslims Use. If you keep reading in Jeremiah, he says to people, follow the law. I think it's about chapter 26 or something. And so when we let Jeremiah do his own application, he actually says, follow the law. So he's not saying it's corrupted, so you just got to keep reading the book. So that'd be my 3 points with that one. And again, that's just actually reading what's there, not reading into it. Now, in terms of the Quran, I've just debated Shabir Ali on that subject, and people could go to my Engaging with Islam YouTube channel, and that's the most recent video to go up at this time. The Quran simply does not say that the Bible is corrupted. It's the way that I'll just make two brief points here because it could go on for too long otherwise. The Quran, the context. Okay, so what is the context in which the Quran is making comments about the Bible? What's the context? Well, the context is that the Jews around Muhammad are reciting the Torah in Hebrew and explaining it to the Muslims in Arabic. Okay? So the Torah is in Hebrew and they're explaining it in Arabic. And the Christians are doing the same. For the Christians, it's either in Greek or Syriac. We know that there were those two influences down there. And so what this means is that the Arabs around Muhammad's region did not have the Bible in their language. Okay? It wasn't in their language. And so the claim of the Quran is that it is a scripture in the Arabic language. And so you don't have to listen to Jews and Christians give their explanation, because you've already got the explanation of the Torah and the Gospel and more in Arabic. So this is what the Quran's on about. And so there are verses in the Quran. Again, I can send people my PowerPoint on this if you want it. The Quran will say it'll say the Meccans who don't believe in Muhammad say, why is this Quran, what does it say? It's something about, it says the Meccans would reject this message if it was not in their own language. And so it's saying, here it is, it's in their own language, so they can't complain. It's that idea. Now, what this means is that the vast majority of the negative comments that you read in the Quran are about how well or poorly the Jews and Christians are explaining their scriptures from one language into another. That's the issue, right? That's the issue. The Christians and the Jews, the Quran is saying, are not explaining their scriptures from their original languages into Arabic. They're not doing it properly. And so that's the big issue in the Quran. Now, I'm not going to go through every verse there, but that's the context. Now, what I did in my debate was I looked at the classic verses that Muslims bring up. So these are in, say, Surah 3, I think it's about verse 77 or somewhere around there.
Surah 3,
78.
Yeah, 78. And Surah 4, 46.
Yeah, and so I looked at those, and then what I said is, let's not just cherry pick a verse here or there. Let's go and look at all of Surah 5, all of Surah 3, all of Surah 2. And if you've watched that debate, you see that what I did was I looked at the verses that Muslims referred to, but then I continued to read through the chapter, and I looked at how does the Quran apply its understanding of the Bible. And so while there may be these negative statements about Christians and Jews mistranslating things and hiding words when they explain it, while there are those phrases, those verses, when you keep reading, you get all these statements where it says, make no distinction between any of the holy books. We believe in all of the prophets and all of their books, and we make no distinction between them. So when we actually let the Quran give its own application in the very chapters that the Muslims quote from, the application is make no distinction between the books. Okay? So that's what I tried to do, which I think was new to the dialogue, in that I said, let's not just look at a verse here or there. Let's look at the common verse they bring up and then read the rest of the chapter and see what does the rest of the chapter say, how does it apply what it's saying. And you can see it never says, therefore the Bible's changed. Therefore, don't treat all the books the same. You've got to have yours, but don't treat theirs the same as yours. It actually says the opposite. It says treat their book the same as your book. We treat them all the same. So that's what I tried to do there. And of course, and I'll just finish up with this point. It raises a very interesting point for us, and that is the Quran says to the Muslims and to the Arabs, or the Quran says to the Arabs around Muhammad, it says, you should accept the Quran because you do not have to learn a foreign language to read it.
Ooh, okay.
And again, you've got to go through my notes, and I can maybe I might even post my PowerPoint or something in the description box. Yeah. But the Quran says to the Arabs, you should believe the Quran because you do not have to learn a foreign language to read it and understand it. Because they were having to learn, Greek and Hebrew and Syriac, they're having to learn the Jewish and Christian languages. Now, that raises an interesting point, doesn't it? Because Muslims today have to learn a foreign language. Right? And so if you're going to take the Quran seriously, this is what it says. The Quran says you should accept the Quran because you do not have to learn a foreign language. It's in a language that you already understand. And if you're going, I keep getting all these ads because of what I look at on the internet. I keep getting all these ads from this very nice Muslim man selling me his course on how to learn Arabic so I can read the Quran. But that is completely against the Quran. Right? Whenever a Muslim, if you're a Muslim and you have to learn Arabic, then it's not for you. Because the argument of the Quran is you don't have to learn a foreign language because it's already in your language. If you're having to learn a foreign language, you may as well learn Hebrew. You may as well learn Greek. The Quran says it came so that you didn't have to learn a foreign language.
Exactly. That's some very good points. And that does even make me think if their God is so powerful, he'd be able to communicate in other languages other than just Arabic. And also the reason why I agree with your statement is because I don't know if it's the Quran or the Hadiths. I don't know specifically of reference, but it says that the Christians, they will be very successful until the day of judgment or until the day of resurrection. So clearly, it shows me that there are common objections that Muslims have in regards to the Bible and it being corrupted and all of this stuff, it doesn't apply. I think, like you said, it's more of a mistranslation or a miscommunication, because there seems to be other verses in the Quran which seems to say stuff that Jews and Christians believe at that time, which they don't actually believe homogeneously as a whole. So, for example, there seems to be in the Quran, I'll mention the verses at the bottom, but I don't know of reference. I know the verses, but not the actual numbers, but seems to say stuff such as the Christians, they worship Allah, Mary, and then Isa. Or, for example, it says that the Christians say that Jesus or Isa is the son of Allah, and the Jews say that Ezra is the son of Allah. But from my research or from looking into it, it doesn't seem that any early Jewish community believed that Ezra was actually the son of God. They did give Ezra a high prominence because they believed that he was an important figure within Judaism at that time, but there doesn't seem to be the belief that they thought that he was the son of God. So it seems to be that maybe the writer of the Quran came across Jews and Muslims that maybe mistranslated things, or maybe it was lost in communication, and then that was said as actual. So, for example, it's like fake news. We have fake news today. That's a really big thing. People posting articles and this and that, and those people unfortunately don't reference it, don't double check it. During my time in university, for example, we had to have references. We had to make sure that our references were credible when we were doing a report or stuff like this. So that is not actually that is going on. It's not referencing it properly from the primary source or the primary text, but rather going from a secondary source and not actually fact checking the claim. So I think that's what was going on over there within those certain things. That's why it seems to be certain verses in the Quran that seem to not, go in line with Christian doctrine. The second,
just on that point, twice in the Quran it says that Muhammad has not read the Bible. Okay, so there are two verses. Again, I don't have them right here, but it's in my debate and you'll see it there, where Muhammad is said to not be someone who read the scriptures that were before him. And so there's a certain irony here in that Muhammad is saying, I haven't read the Bible, but I can tell you what it means.
Wow.
And there are people doing that today. I was just talking to someone the other day who's never read the Bible, but he was telling me what it means. And I'm there going, well, but the Quran actually says that Muhammad has not read the Bible. He hadn't read it. He wasn't aware of it. It's, but he's going to tell you what it means.
I mean, that goes in line with the traditional narrative that he was unlettered and he didn't essentially know how to read or write, which some scholars are now putting that into question, but that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, it's interesting that Muslims would always utilize people like Dr. or Rabbi Tovia Singer or Dr. Bar Ehrman to try and say that the New Testament is corrupted. But the irony is, what would you say to Muslims that say, well, the Quran has been perfectly preserved since the time of Muhammad till now?
Yeah, well, I'd just say that, what are you talking about? Now, I've got an article and an evangelistic booklet on this called The Preservation of the Quran. If you go and read the Islamic sources, they are very clear that Muhammad never collected the Quran himself. He commissioned various disciples, companions, to make their own collections. But when he died, the Quran had not been collected by, it certainly wasn't collected by him into one volume. And what we see is that his companions, as they went out with the other jihadists conquering the Christians around them, the Christians and Persians, they these companions were teaching the Bible, the Quran, where they went, and they made their own collections. And so we know that Ubay ibn Ka'b, that his Quran had 116 chapters in it, 116 surahs, and they were arranged a certain way. But Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, his Quran had 110 surahs in it. So he had less, and his one was arranged differently. And then, of course, there was the other one by Zayd bin Thabit, which is the most well-known collection, but the others were being used more so. And he's had 114 surahs with their own order in them. And there's also differences within the verses, and I show all this in my article, The Preservation of the Quran. So what that means is, in the early decades of Islam, there were synoptic Qurans. Right, so you know how Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptic gospels because the word synoptic means a common view, right? Optic means eye, and sun means sort of together. They're seen together because they've got a common view. Well, there were synoptic Qurans. There was the Quran according to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the Quran according to Ibn Abbas, according to Zayd bin Thabit, according to Ubay ibn Ka'b, and they were being used in different regions. And, they would have taught more or less the same type of thing, but they're in no way at all identical. Right? They're in no way at all identical. And trouble then started when jihadists from these different regions started to join together to go and fight other people. They would recite the Quran differently. When they got together, they'd go, hang on, we didn't learn the Quran that way. And so one had learned it from Ibn Abbas, one had learned it from Ubay ibn Ka'b, and when their students got together, they were having arguments over this. And obviously you don't want jihadists having arguments with each other. That's going to end badly. And so Uthman had to take action pretty quick to standardise one Quran, because otherwise you'd have civil war on the basis of the Quran. You'd have jihadists fighting each other. And so he had to standardise a Quran, and he did. And again, I've got all these references in my articles where Abdullah ibn Mas'ud just went, I don't like Uthman's Quran. Hide your Qurans from Uthman, because Uthman went around destroying the other Qurans to standardise one. Now, that's hardly the Quran being preserved, right? If the Quran was preserved in the way that Muhammad set it up, it would be that Syria would still be following today the Quran according to Ubay ibn Ka'b. And Iraq today would still be following the Quran according to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, but none of them do, right? They're now all having to follow a Quran from someone else, and not the first, like they don't follow the first Quran that came to them, they follow a later one. So to say the Quran's been preserved, you've got to be honest about this history. There's been a lot of standardising and burning to make those. But then it's not just that, it's also even the Quran that exists today. Let me just grab these. Oops, here we go. So here are 4 different Arabic Qurans. Right, these are called the Qira'ats, which are the different readings. And if you know anything about Arabic's got dots and dashes at various points to indicate which consonant is being referred to, and also what the vowels are. Now, the first writings of the Quran didn't have any of those dots or dashes, so at some points it's actually quite vague, and it could be read or interpreted. You actually had to interpret the text and say, well, what is this word? You just can't read it. Whereas in English, you can just read the word. In Arabic, you've got to put the dots and dashes there. Most of the time, it's straightforward. But there's still thousands of times when it's not. So between these two Qurans, this is the Hafs Quran, the Hafs version, and then the Warsh version. Between these two, there's about 1,300 differences.
Wow.
So it's not that there's, one or two differences. It's actually there's a fair bit. And again, if you go to my article called The Preservation of the Quran, I show you a picture. I can't get it now. It's on a bookshelf over there. I show you a picture of an encyclopedia set which has over 10,000 variants of the Quran listed in the encyclopedia. It's an encyclopedia of variants. Now, what happens is, Christians don't know about this type of thing. You've got people like Bart Ehrman who make the variants in the Bible known, and so Muslims know about the Bible, but there's no Bart Ehrman. Like Bart Ehrman's not interested. He probably will sell as many books, but he's not interested in making all the variants known about
Quranic textual variants.
Yeah, I mean, the easy thing to find out is, Muslims interview him about the Quran and get him to say certain things. And he could easily find this out, but, he hasn't done that, so I don't know why he hasn't done it. But I've got an encyclopedia set over there. You can see it on my website, with over 10,000 variants. So this idea that the Quran's perfectly preserved and the Bible's not is just nonsense. Around the world today, different Qurans are used in different regions.
Yeah, I really agree. I think that's just one of these modern day myths or these modern day things that Muslims believe. And actually, in regards to Bart Ehrman, what a lot of people don't realize is that, like, Muslims always try to say, why is there so many versions and variants? But what they don't realize that that's not corruption in the sense that they're thinking of. It's just different translations and stuff like this, like the Textus Receptus and the Alexandrian text and all this, the Masoretic text, all of these different things. So there's actual textual understandings of why these things are going on. Whereas with Muslims, it's a bit different. And also Muslims believe literally every single word of the Quran is actually from Allah. So every single word, sentence, thought, letter, everything is from Allah. And they believed in the eternal, uncreated Quran, which is next to Allah in Jannah or in heaven. So obviously their view of the text versus the Christian view of the text is going to be a bit different. But they try to impose their view with how they see the Quran in the modern sense with the Bible, which is not exactly accurate. And this gets to the next section. There is a lot of modern day beliefs or myths, I'll call them, that Muslims believe in regards to, the Quran, the Hadiths, or the Bible. So the first one, for example, is, I saw your debate, a bit of it. I didn't watch the full part, but I saw your debate on the topic of the satanic verses. About Muhammad, telling people to bow down to Alat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat, basically committing shirk, basically. But a lot of Muslims today would try to say that that's a weak hadith. There is even schools of Islam that reject the hadiths altogether because they believe that Al-Bukhari and Al-Tabri and all these other individuals made up stuff about Muhammad. So what would you say to those modern day beliefs that satanic verses and Muhammad wanting to commit suicide or whatever is weak hadiths, or to Muslims that don't believe in the hadiths at all? What would you say that's in line with historical Islam, or that's a modern day invention?
When it comes to these satanic verses where Muhammad said that, the gods of Mecca, their intercession was to be hoped for, and so he's giving credence to the gods of Mecca, saying that they can intercede for you. It's not really a matter of hadith at that point, because this is just general Islamic history, right? So the hadiths are sort of a particular category of Islamic history, but there's the books called the Sirah, which are the biographies of Muhammad's life, and I'd encourage people to watch that debate where I give all the references to what Islamic scholars say about this. And what they say is that from the very first moment Muslims started to write up Muhammad's life, right? So the very first generation who started to write down what Muhammad did, the satanic verses was there. Right? So it's there from the very beginning, and it's not just there from the very beginning, but it's there from lots of different people. So it's not just one person who writes it and then everyone else copies the idea from him. It's not like that. It's multiple different people all saying from the very beginning that this happened. And so really, I mean, if you're going to reject it, then you've got to reject everything, because if you've got multiple people from the very beginning saying that this is what happened, then on what grounds are you going to reject that, right?
Exactly.
And the Islamic scholars who accept it, and there are many who accept it, Ibn Taymiyyah, and big names accept it. What they say is that what happened was, in the 2nd and 3rd Islamic centuries, a doctrine developed called the sinlessness of the prophets.
Oh, okay.
And as this doctrine developed, then all of a sudden the story of Muhammad's life no longer fitted with this new doctrine, with this new belief. And so, I mean, if you read the Quran, it talks about different prophets sinning. It talks about Muhammad confessing his sins. It commands to confess his sins. But in a century or so later, so into the 2nd Islamic century, they start to see the prophets as sinless for various reasons. And so all of a sudden, they've now got a different standard that they use to judge that history and the hadiths. And so remember, a hadith can be rejected because it doesn't fit in with what is believed to be right. And so it sort of becomes self-fulfilling. You only accept what you believe to be right, and so you no longer believe in the hadith or any history. So I would simply say that the historical evidence for it is overwhelming, and Islamic scholars say that.
Yeah, and I know about this whole sinlessness of the prophets. That's one of the main objections that Muslims would try to say to the Bible, for example. They will try to say that prophets within the Bible do heinous acts, such as Noah, such as David,
King David,
such as Solomon, all of these other stuff, such as Moses' brother, all of these other individuals. They do so many, even Moses himself, they do so many things which they say that the biblical authors invented to try and make the Bible, to try and make the prophets look bad and all of this other stuff. And then they say...
Which is ridiculous. It doesn't even work, because when people make those types of changes, they make the prophets better.
Yeah.
They don't make the prophet worse. I mean, the fact that we record those things about the prophets that we love, it's not something you'd make up, because you love these men, You're not going to make it up unless it happened.
It's happened, yeah. And actually, from a historical perspective, that actually gives a greater validity to these events happening, because there's a criterion called the criterion of embarrassment, which basically historians use to try and say that if a certain embarrassing thing for the people at the time was recorded, that brings the validity of such an event at a greater level, because people at the time would not have invented certain stories. That's why I personally do believe in the existence of Muhammad. I know that there's some Christians and some secular scholars that don't, but I believe things like the satanic verses, things like the non-miraculous nature of Muhammad in terms of him being told to do miracles and him not being able to do it, but saying the Quran itself is a miracle. All of these things, I believe, brings more of a validity to Muhammad being an actual, a real figure. And I think people need to not. Oh, it's Aaron as well. It was Prophet Aaron as well. So, but yeah, those things that we shouldn't brings more clarity to Muhammad's existence. And that brings me really to the next, because there's another 2 or 3 sections that we're going through, and then I think we will wrap it up.
I've got a very early start tomorrow. I've got to go lecture 200 kilometers away, so we'll see how we go.
Okay, yeah, it'll be another 10 minutes or so. So
I'll probably go 15 more minutes.
Okay, 15 more minutes. Okay, that's fine. So that brings me to the next section. They try to say that it's internal critiques or internal evidences within the Bible for Muhammad, and internal critiques of Christianity within the Bible. So if, the historical Hadith Quran don't work, the next thing that they would try to use is the Bible itself. So they would try to say that Muhammad is prophesied in certain verses in the Bible. So verses such as Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15 to 18, Isaiah chapter 42, John chapter 14. Why don't you believe, or why should we as Christians not believe that that's referring to Muhammad? And instead,
now, if you want to see my main presentation on this, I did a debate with Adnan Rashid in Western Australia. And so you can go to my website and look up this topic, is Muhammad foretold in the Bible, with myself and Adnan Rashid. So I go through it there. Now, the reason why we shouldn't believe this claim is twofold. The first is that it just doesn't fit with the story of the Bible.
Okay.
Right? So the story of the Bible is God made humanity to bring him glory. We failed to do it. He made the nation of Israel to be his special nation in this world, to bring him glory and to be his representative nation, to be a priestly nation in the world. They failed to do it. And so God says, I am going to come and do it myself. I'm going to bring glory to my name. And you can read my material where this is basic Bible here. And so God says he is going to come and do what we have failed to do. And so every gospel begins with, prepare the way for the Lord. The Lord is coming to bring glory, for his glory to be seen among the nations. And so all of the Gospels begin with God is coming in Jesus to bring glory to his name and salvation to his people.
Okay.
And so Jesus comes as the Messiah, the one who brings the resurrection kingdom of God, overcoming the judgment of sin and death. Now that he has brought the resurrection kingdom of God, the invitation of God goes out to the world. Okay? Now, that's just the Bible story. To then say, and by the way, Muhammad's come and he's bringing a new set of laws, and you've got to keep some new laws. It just doesn't fit with the story, because the whole point of the story is we can't keep the laws of God. Right? So we can't keep the laws of God. We don't give God glory. Islam doesn't give God glory. As soon as Muhammad died, there was civil war with each other, and it doesn't bring glory to God. And so just to say, Muhammad's come, and you don't really have to worry about Jesus being for all the world, bringing the resurrection kingdom of God, doing what you can't do. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It's now just, here's a new set of laws that you've got to keep, and hopefully if you keep them and try to be good enough, then you might make it into paradise. There's just so much against just the storyline of the Bible, right? So the phrase I gave in my debate was, I said, Muhammad is foretold in the Bible in the same way that Baha'i Allah from the Baha'i religion is foretold in the Quran. Right? It's just a completely different story. You know, like if you read the Quran, it says Muhammad's the last prophet, right? He's the seal of prophets. So if someone comes along and says, "Oh yeah, I believe in Islam, but I'm the next prophet," you want to say,
this is contradiction.
you're not taking the Quran seriously. Right? So the Baha'i religion does not take the Quran seriously, even though it says it does. You can't be a Baha'i unless you love Muhammad and love Jesus. But it's exactly, you know, Muhammad's just not in the story just isn't the same story. Islam's got a different story. It just doesn't fit in the story. That's my first point. My second point would be that the verses they refer to just don't refer to Muhammad. So, you know, Deuteronomy 18 is in a section of the Bible where it's talking about leadership within Israel. It talks about Israel's judges, Israel's priests, Israel's kings, and Israel's prophets. And so that's just the context. The context is the prophets of Israel, the kings of Israel. And it says that they are from amongst the brothers, and that phrase is used about the kings of Israel. You know, you've got to appoint a king from your brothers. And so in context, it just means your brother Israelites. And so it just doesn't, it's just not pointing to Muhammad. That's it. You just like, there has to be a place for reading in context.
Yep.
Right? You know, they then refer to the Paraclete, you know, the Comforter in John 14 to 16, and they say this refers to Muhammad. But again, there has to be a place for reading in context, because Jesus says the Holy Spirit is the Comforter. And so, you know, and then you keep reading the Gospel. He says, you haven't received the Spirit yet, but you will receive the Spirit soon. And at the end of the Gospel, they receive the Spirit.
Yeah.
And so, and even in the prophets beforehand, like the prophets of Joel and Ezekiel and Isaiah, it says, in the future, God is going to give His Spirit to His people.
Yeah.
Right? And so the prophets were saying God's going to give His Spirit. Jesus says, I've come to give the Spirit. John the Baptist says Jesus is going to give you the Spirit. You know, like you're ignoring this huge theme all the way from the one part of the Bible, the beginning to the end, of God's going to give the Spirit. All the prophets are saying it. Jesus is going to give it. Jesus says, I'm going to give it. He then gives the Spirit. And then Muslims go, oh, no, it's Muhammad. And I'm going, well, you know, you have no interest in reading in context.
You don't.
And there comes a point where you've got to say this is just dishonest, when there is just so much evidence, and it's just such a big theme to say, oh no, it doesn't mean that. You're going, well, sorry, you're not even being serious.
You're not.
So,
You're not.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit with the storyline of the Bible to say that someone's coming after Jesus to put you back under law. That's just ludicrous. And the verses they give just aren't even indicating a prophet anyway. So that's how I'd answer it. We better keep moving.
Okay, so another thing is, very good answers there. This is in regards to the nature of Allah and Yahweh. So, for example, Muslims will try to say that Allah and Yahweh are just synonymous, they're one and the same. So what would you say to somebody who would say, aren't Allah and Yahweh just the same being? Why are they not different? What would you say to that? That say Allah and Yahweh are the same?
My first thing would be to say the name is important.
Definitely.
So in the Old Testament, God keeps saying again and again, my name is Yahweh, and the name Yahweh is going to be known around the world. Now, it's Christianity that took the name Yahweh to every continent on the planet.
It's true.
Right? We are the religion that has taken the name of Yahweh to every continent on the planet. Now, the name matters. You can't use the name Baal. You can't use the name... I'm trying to think of the other names there.
Chemosh.
I can't remember.
Dagon.
Yeah. Chemosh. Dagon. Right? There are other names.
Yeah.
And the Bible says the names are different, right? So you just can't say, oh, Allah, it's all the same. No. Allah is not the name for God, right? Allah is not the word for God in Arabic, right? Allah is not the word for God in Arabic. Allah is the name of God in the Quran. Right? So it's actually a replacement of the name Yahweh, and the name Yahweh never appears in the Quran.
It doesn't.
Right? It doesn't appear. So my first thing would be they just have a different name, and the name actually matters. The name matters. My second point would be that what these gods do and say is completely different. So Yahweh is God, is the Father. One of his names is Father. In the Quran, that's explicitly denied in, say, Surah 5, verse 18 and other places, where it says no one can come to Allah except as a slave. Allah does not take to himself a son. So, it's not just that Yahweh and Allah are different names. Yahweh is our Father, but Allah is never your Father, right? And then I've got a diagram that I sometimes put up. You'll see in my debate, it's a diagram of the Torah, Prophet, Psalms, Gospel, and the Quran. And I look at God made us in his image, and how God made us in his image is in the Torah, Prophet, Psalms, and Gospel, but it's not in the Quran. How God is Father, and there is the Son of God, that's in the Torah, Prophet, Psalms, and Gospel, but it's not in the Quran. How God accepts a sacrifice of atonement for us to approach him. That's in the Torah, Prophet, Psalms, and Gospel, but it's not in the Quran. And I've just got a list of all the differences, and they just teach different things. They are different types of people, and so it's not surprising that they have a different name, because they're different. They're just different in their characteristics. So they're just not the same God.
Yeah, they're not. It's not a continuation there. It's a discontinuation. It would be akin to, let's say, Mormonism or something like that. I think this is a whole aberration from the original beliefs. So then the last section really is just, what sort of advice would you give young believers that want to get into engaging with Muslims? I know that you have a book, Where to Begin with Islam.
Well, I'm going to do a shameless book plug.
That's fine.
So that's my book, and you can buy it written. Maybe I can send you the links, and you can put them in the description.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what I like about my book. I had a man say to me, he said, I love your book. And when I was reading it, I could tell that you are not a writer. Okay. Now, when you first hear that, it doesn't sound very flattering to be told that someone read your book and they say that you're not a writer. But what he meant by that was, he could tell that I was a debater and an evangelist who had written a book. I'm not just an academic that writes books.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, there are many people who do that, so I'm not saying I'm unique in that regard. But what I did in my book was I wrote each chapter the way I would like a ministry book to be written. And what I mean by that is, on the chapter on the incarnation, on the chapter on the Trinity, on the chapter of salvation, on the chapter of the crucifixion, on all these chapters and others, the chapter is there, and you can read the chapter, and I go into great detail about things. And then at the end of the chapter, I give you a summary, so that when you come back to it, you don't have to read the whole chapter. You can go back to the summary to be reminded of what's in it. And then, at the end of each chapter, it then says, if you want an evangelistic booklet that you can print out, right? So this is the Is Jesus God one. So in chapter 4, I talk about Is Jesus God, and I take you through all the material. I give you a summary so you can come back to it quickly to be refreshed. And then I say, go to the website and you can download this little booklet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take it to a printer. We've got, printing shops in Australia. I know you do over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a PDF file, and you can get this printed out, and then you can give this to your Muslim friend. So this booklet will put into practice what you learn in the book.
Okay.
Okay, because what I used to find frustrating as a young evangelist was I'd read these great books, and there are great books out there, but in order to put it into practice and to share it with someone, it was quite difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what I've done is I've said, I've made the evangelistic booklet for you, print this out, and then give this to your Muslim friend and say, let's read this together, or you have a read, and then we can discuss it. So that's what I think is unique about my book, and that's what I think if you're just getting into this, that's why I wrote my book for apologists who want to do this, and I've tried to make it really useful for you so that you can put it into practice straight away without having to sit down and write it all out yourself. Mm-hmm. My other thing would be just to be online and to be debating with Muslims on Facebook.
Okay.
On Facebook and YouTube, and just be respectful and ask for help, and you've got to have the long term in mind. Okay, so when you're debating, have the long term in mind. That is, God willing, you'll be around for decades. So so how old are you, Hans?
24.
24. So you're a young man. I'm 30 years older than you.
Okay.
So you've got 3 decades of life until you get to my age. 3 decades, right? You need to be thinking about that. You need to be thinking, I don't have to win every battle right here and now. So sometimes I'll go onto Muslim channels, and I won't do as well as I could have. But you know what? I don't mind, because I'm in this for the long run, and it's not that I'll go really badly, but I may not answer one question or something as well as I could, and I go, okay, I could have answered that better. I'll make sure I learn from my mistake, or if it's a mistake or I didn't do it properly, I'll learn from that. But I don't let it bother me. Any of these types of things in 10 years' time, you won't even see them anymore online. You know what I mean? You got to live for the future. And so you've still got sort of 5 decades of ministry in you, and so that's a fair time. You've got half a century of ministry in you till you're about, say, 75. So you need to be thinking in the long term. You don't have to have the final word. You don't have to. You learn from each situation. You learn what you need to, and if you don't get the final word, if you don't say things as accurately as you could have, you learn, and you just get ready for the next time.
Okay, thank you. Before we finish off, because it's Father's Day over here in England, so I'll get my dad to come. Dad, come. I'll get my dad to come in quickly since it's Father's Day, just to say hi. It's my dad.
Hi.
Hello, sir. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure is mine. My boy has been saying a lot about you. Yeah.
He's a good boy. From what I've heard, he's a good boy. Maybe the next time I'm in London, we can meet each other or something.
Definitely. He's a good boy. Yeah. He loves the work of God. All the best. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And God bless you very much, Reverend Samuel.
Okay. All the best.
All the best. Thank you.
Bye.